Hello, Brad. Welcome back to the Wax Museum.
Hello, John. It's been a while.
I feel like we just talked. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird. I love the magic of podcasting. It's so magic.
So, how are you doing?
I'm good. Still good. Still good. I don't think we have to do that. So you ever do that with like small talk when people are just like, so what'd you do this weekend? I'm like, please, I don't want to do this. Can we solve the world's problems instead?
My favorite is my favorite's like, oh, how's it going? And then as soon as they start to open their mouth, just say, I don't care.
Well, it's like The Rock in wrestling, right? It'd be like, what's your name? It doesn't matter what your name is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're going through the book Sapiens, and it looks like this will probably be a three-parter. So this is part 2. We're talking about the agricultural revolution. Last episode, we talked about the cognitive revolution. You might want to hear that before you hear this one, but I probably doesn't matter that much. You're not going to be like, I don't know what agriculture is. Anyways.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll go back to that quote again that we started with in the first episode. So 3 important revolutions that shaped the course of history: the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. Each of those have different time periods. So cognitive, 70,000 years ago. Agricultural revolution, 12,000 years ago. And the scientific revolution, 500 years ago. So that'll be part 3. So today we're talking about only 12,000 years ago. That's actually a very short time. Like if you consider like a 4.5 billion year old Earth, 70,000 is not very long ago.
That's true. Mankind occupies a fairly narrow window.
I had to look that up because I had an idea for a Facebook post that I'm going to post. I'm like, can we all just agree that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old? We'll see how that goes. That'll be fun. I don't know. I just want to put it out there and see what people legitimately think.
The answer to can we all agree is no.
It's always no. It's always no. Yeah. Okay. So I love this. He says the agricultural revolution is history's biggest fraud.
Yeah, it's a pretty big trade-off.
Yeah.
It offered a lot to us, and 12,000 years later, we kind of look and go, maybe we shouldn't be eating so much wheat.
Keto.
Maybe we should be roaming around and eating as much diversity because we gave up a lot of diversity in our diet, but it allowed us to have surplus for essentially the first time.
Well, I think that's what's really interesting about this, because it's like the agricultural revolution left farmers with lives generally more difficult and less satisfying. And he argues hunter-gatherers were more stimulated. And I think we're noticing that with like the COVID lockdowns. A lot of people are like, I have no purpose in my life. And it's like, it's because you're less stimulated. And so hunter-gatherers were constantly stimulated. And they were less in danger of starvation and disease, which is counterintuitive when you first think about it. But when you consider how the population exploded, we did create a situation where we had a ton of humans and we had to figure out how to feed them.
It's not even that. It's that everybody becomes so it allowed surplus, which allowed a division of labor. You actually had people who were, I'm the farmer, I'm the guy that's doing this, I'm going to be a blacksmith, I'm going to take care of the cattle, I'm going to specialize in this. So you had division of labor, and it grew organically, so everything was working together. But if you take out one part of it, then it kind of collapses, and you have these kind of collapses where if drought occurs, you don't get a good crop, then people don't survive the winter. If you're talking about a place where there is winter,
right?
But yeah, it left us open to a lot of problems. There's no such thing as a famine if everybody is a hunter-gatherer tribe, unless the planet just kind of dies. But That's what it is. That's part of the trade-off of this agricultural revolution. We agreed to sit down and settle, and it gave us the ability to create surpluses and division of labor, and allow artists, and to allow for philosophers, and to allow for doctors and shamans and preachers and monks and all these people. Like that can't exist in a hunter-gatherer society.
So plants domesticated people, and it's like you said, now you're stuck in one place. Yeah. I think, hunter-gatherer society, it's like if you went to an area where there wasn't food, you just move to the next area, right?
Yeah, you would find food where you are, or you just wouldn't exist.
Yeah. So just as economic success of a company is measured by dollars and not the happiness of its employees, evolutionary success is measured by copies of DNA. I thought that was so interesting, because
it's a selfish gene, right? It's it's kind of a weird thing to make your mind think of, but we exist to pass on our DNA. If we don't pass on our DNA, we haven't fulfilled our, evolutionary goal.
And there are people that don't.
Yeah.
And they found other meaning, right? Like it's
not a personal goal. I mean, you can very much enjoy your life and not procreate. But the point of, like, without evolution, like as a species, as an animal, as a species, that's the whole point, is passing on your DNA. And to me, one of the questions is like, well, what's life? Because a virus isn't alive, but it exists for the sole purpose of passing on its DNA.
Right.
So it's funny to think like it's kind of like a deep truth that DNA just really exists to pass itself on, and we are just tools that allow DNA to get passed on to the next generation.
Well, it was interesting too, because there was like a part in the cognitive revolution chapters where he was talking about priests, and I can't remember the other one. Oh, priests and monks.
Yeah.
They transmit ideas, not genetics. And so like with the cognitive revolution and this kind of what you were saying, subjective reality or subjective concepts, anyways, this subjective information, we're able to pass that on. And it's like why we have institutions is like, it's these ideas that are kind of propagated, and they are passed on like DNA, right?
Well, yeah, they are. Well, not even, like, they explode like ideas. To me, like, you can't unthink an idea, right? And you can, like, human society, like, all we're doing at this point is building on a foundation in the past of everybody else's ideas. Right. And that's part of the success of humans, is that we can learn from others. Like, there's all these ideas that we can have, and just by interacting with people, you get all these ideas. And like, we don't need to, we're not going back to like ancient philosophies. Like, we know it now. Like, we're building on that. And you can see, like, like you talk about, like, in the history of philosophy, like, this guy came along and this guy objected to this, what this guy said, so he said this, right? It's this part, so now we're saying this, and it builds. Like, we build on a philosophical tradition. And you can build it in a good way or a bad way, right? It's just change. It's not really progress.
Which, I mean, that's evolution too, though, right? Like, it's,
and that's
like
the agriculturally, it was a change, right? It's wrong to think of it as progress. I think that's part of what Sapiens said in the book.
I like that. It's wrong to think of it as progress. Yeah.
There were some good things and there were some bad things. Like, we opened ourselves up to disease and famine and pestilence, and beyond that, political corruption, to theft. Like, in a hunter-gatherer society, like, I can come along and take what you're actually eating right now, but I can't come along and, drain your grain silos and steal your cattle herd and decimate, like, what you've spent years building. So it opens us up to that. And it also opens us up to the need for property rights. Farmers say, this is mine. This is my land. These are my cows. These are my farming equipments. You can't take this. So until the agricultural revolution, we didn't really need society. or laws or any kind of real strict code of how to interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Only when we kind of said, we're going to sit down and this is mine, you do your thing, I'm going to do my thing, that's where we kind of got the need for property rights.
Because I was thinking, okay, so when we talk about progressivism, I was like, you know what? I'm a progressive if what we mean by progress is actually progress. Because it's like, if we just say that we're going to change things and we think we're making it for the better, are we realizing what secondary hazards we're going to cause? It's just like in industrial hygiene. We're like, okay, well, we'll put the guys in suits and that'll protect them. And we'll put respirators on and they'll wear gloves. And it's like, okay, now they're going to have trouble communicating. Now they're going to get too hot. Now and there's all these secondary things that build. And so when we talk about like, oh, good, agricultural revolution, this is good. We now are able to stay in one place and grow lots and lots of food and store it all up. Well, there's secondary hazards that happen as a result.
Yep, unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about intended consequences and unintended consequences. But yeah, like progressivism, like you're like almost like a political ideology, and it would be, I guess, kind of immoral. It's the term progress. You're saying like, it's like saying, I'm the everybody is good group. Do you hate me? Like, well, I can't hate the everybody is good group. I mean, that
exactly.
Like, I can't be against. I can't, like, of course I'd call myself a progressive. Like, oh yeah, I like progress. Like that sounds like a good thing. But who's deciding?
Well, that's it, right? And so, and I mean, like, and if we do change things, if we just if we demolish all hierarchy, does that fix everything? Or is there a reason why we have hierarchy? And you can get into Peterson on that and everything, right?
Well, it's communist Russia is what happens, and millions of people die. That's what progressivism. That's what that leads to. If you extend it out, that's what it leads to. It leads to a larger state, more and more control. Everybody, like, and it's.
I think what people are really looking for, though, is a hybrid. Like some kind of a mixed economy is what really everyone at some level should be looking for. And I mean, it's funny. I have a friend that I argue with on Twitter sometimes, and he's like, there should be no minimum wage. And I'm like, really? Isn't that like slavery? Like,
No.
And
like it, but why? Why? I could easily argue there should be no minimum wage.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a free market. Mm-hmm. And the government, every time you have a complex social system, there's a law that as the system gets more and more complicated, when you interfere with it and you try to create an intended consequence, the unintended consequences will always be greater. And so you interfere, you think, you have the wrong words, I have the best words, just trust me, I'll fix it. I do something, and then you're like, oh, well, these problems were created. Let's also then fix the problems by adding more. And you just add problems, and all of your problems are created by yourself. Like, you're creating those problems.
It's like Lisa Simpson's hair. I know.
I don't get the reference.
There's an episode where she like gets gum in her hair, and her mom's like, "Oh no, you need to add peanut butter." And so she adds peanut butter, and then it's like, "Oh, that didn't work." And then she keeps adding a bunch of stuff to her hair.
Yeah, anyways, I had a friend that did that. He spilled some paint, and people were like, "Oh, you got to rub it. Do some soap." And no, that didn't work. Oh, you got to add some gasoline. Oh, that didn't work. He's rubbing it with gasoline. They're like, "Oh, you got to vacuum it." So he started vacuuming it and lit the vacuum on fire because he was vacuuming with gasoline.
Exactly, unintended consequences. Yeah, but I mean, like, to me, it's like minimum wage should have a threshold, and it seems to me that 15 might be too much. And so. But I mean, like, I don't know. I can't conceptualize how no minimum wage would actually work out.
So why is 15 a problem then?
Why is 15 a problem? I think it's a struggle for small businesses.
But the higher the minimum wage, the better. That's the argument, isn't it?
See, I'm against that argument.
No, that's what the argument for a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah, it is.
That raising the minimum wage is good. So if raising the minimum wage is good, then 25 is better than 15. So that's the problem. Somebody who says that 15, and I mean, I love Sapiens. Like all the idea, the philosophy is perfect. But if you say that $15 is better than 5, well, 20 is better than 15. 50 is better than 20.
Well, that's why I'm saying a threshold,
So
right?
15, it gets wrong because, well, yeah, but the idea is it's wrong for the state to make that law. It's an unjust infringement on our liberties. If I say, hey, John, do you like in this podcast, I'm getting paid $0 an hour. Is it illegal or immoral or wrong? It's a voluntary agreement.
Right.
If I say, like a Skip guy, he agrees to deliver food to my house for $3. If it takes him 10 minutes or it takes him 4 hours. And so if you artificially, it's supply and demand. If you artificially raise a price, demand for that goes down.
Right.
So what happens is demand for labor will just plummet. So somebody coming out of high school really needs a $7 an hour job.
Right.
They don't exist.
Right.
So then what happens? They go on welfare, they do something, or they enter into a black economy where they can make money, but it's not under the official economy because there's a lot of people that don't have an hourly rate. Right? A lot of people don't make hourly wages.
Right.
And some people, I don't really like it. I don't know what I would do if I had the power to change the world. But the state shouldn't set minimum wage. Really,
sounds like you're a very
if you apply
hardcore
like an objectivist
capitalist.
philosophy, that's right. Because what's the justification for the state restricting our liberty to freely interchange with each other for whatever price you want? If I want to work for you for 2 hours and you pay me in beer and pizza, I'm okay with that. If I want to work for you for 10 hours and you're going to give me $10 an hour and I agree to that, that's good. It's to mutual benefit. Nobody is being coerced. I mean, it's not greed. I can't say if you agree to pay me $10 and you only pay me $5, then I have the state would step in and say you violated Brad's rights. You need to pay him what you agreed to pay him.
So the state would step in to make sure there's no coercion.
Yeah.
The state would step in to make sure there's not like a bunch of people in the industrial hygiene industry that's deciding that every hygienist is only going to make negative $10 an hour, just something ridiculous, right? So that conspiracy can't happen, but they can't set the wage. The state would not set the wage.
Well, the problem is if you just tomorrow took it away, that doesn't work. That's awful.
Right.
You have to kind of slowly build up from the foundation a system that is kind of more philosophically correct. And it's focusing on freedom. Like, we should be free to exchange ideas. We should be free to exchange goods for services. And I don't see or I guess I should say an objectivist wouldn't see why the state should interfere in that. As long as everybody is it's to mutual benefit. You have contracts, right? You enter into a contract. I do it all the time. It's like bid tender. I'll do all of this work for you if you agree to give me this amount. It's not hourly. It's the state isn't setting in and going, you know what? I think that what Brad's work is doing here, I think that this is actually worth more than that. So you should pay him what I think he's worth. And worth is not something that somebody else gives you. It's yourself. It's innate. It's just you. And that's what it is. The state can't say, if you want to pay somebody for an hour. And the problem too is also enforcement, right? Because people just don't call it an hourly wage. It's called piecework.
Right.
So I'll pay you for a certain amount. And farm work is like that too, right? Where they're not really getting paid an hourly wage. And so saying it it's this $15 minimum, it helps such a poor people. And it's what's funny about this wage, and I've heard people talk about it before, it's that the people who are most against raising the minimum wage to $15 are people making just above minimum wage.
Right.
Their wage would go up, but they're against it because somebody making less actually will be benefited more.
Yeah. Well, then
The
I think
wealthier you
also
are, you tend to support it more because it seems more disconnected from you. And it sounds good, but there's a road to hell is paved with good intentions, I guess. Like, it sounds good. It sounds like it's coming from a good place, but it's just philosophically kind of wrong.
And I have a friend who is like, I've worked for like 10 years at this company to get up to $15 an hour. And now they're changing the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Right? And it changes the bar because then rent goes up, price of food goes up. Like, I understand that argument. Anyways, so one of history's few iron laws is that luxuries tend to become necessities and spawn new obligations.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be part two of that, like another part of that agricultural revolution being kind of a scam that's unintended consequences.
Yeah,
right?
and one of the analogies is for the agricultural revolution is, I don't want to call it Twitter revolution, but it's the internet. And the idea that you can't unthink things. Like, we're not going to decide to go back to life before internet.
No.
Like, it's inconceivable. It doesn't make sense. So, like, let's say, like, a few generations after the agricultural revolution, there were some smart thinkers and people saying, guys, this agricultural revolution thing, it's dangerous. It's going to open us up to famine and droughts. Like, they saw it, right? But people were like, huh? What are we going to do? Like, we can't go back. That's what it is with the internet. You're looking at stats right now, and it's like, it's killing our minds. Children aren't thinking. The self-harm is increasing, all these things, but we can't go back.
Well, and I think that's the thing that I see in a lot of ways, within modern day, like conservative evangelicalism. It's like there's so many things where people want to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about like sexuality, you talk about abortion, like all of these things are like, I don't see society reversing any of this stuff. And like, in particular, it's like when we talk about like abortion, it's like I know I get in trouble when I talk to evangelicals about this all the time.
I'm like trained not to talk about that.
Yeah. But I'm like, I don't think that there's legitimately people out there that are saying, I want more abortions. More abortions is better. Like, I think that we all want to figure out how to limit it.
Yeah.
But just making it illegal is not going to fix it. It's like they want, it's a gender issue where it's like you're not giving someone autonomy. And that's why, anyways.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of things that I'm seeing within evangelicalism that they're like, no, we got to push on this. We got to stop this. We got to stop that. And I'm looking at that. I'm like, I find it so hard to believe you guys are going to make any traction on this. You guys have been trying this since like Reagan. And it's like, you're not reversing the progress. And we can debate whether it's progress or not, but it's like, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. So it's like, what do we do with what we have now? How do we approach things with compassion, with love? Because I'm like, it's the same thing when you talk about minimum wage. It's like, how do you address that in love? Well, you don't address it in love by saying, how you made $15? Yeah, it's now going to be $5. Like, that's not, nobody is going to let that happen. Right. And so.
Yeah. No, I've totally been trained not to talk about abortion. I've spoken with people and like religious people, and I generally I end up feeling that people think I'm like really evil or something, but I just, I'm not. Yeah, no one's good. And that issue is one of the most important is I find when people argue it, what they do is it's all about words.
Yeah.
Like pro-life, pro-choice. Well, both of those are insincere. You're using the word itself to it's like saying, oh, you're against the good guy group? How can you be against the good guy group? So when I debated, I'm like, I'll use a term and they're like, oh, well, it's I don't want to like pro-abortion or anti, I don't know what. I'm like, you can call me anything you want. Like, choose your words. Let's debate the ideas. Like, you want to call me idiot tard because I support something? You can call me an idiot tard. Like, we'll just define for the purposes of this discussion. We'll just use that word. You use whatever words you want. Like, the ideas are still the same. So, but that's what people do. They think it's an argument to like, well, what would you want to be? Like pro-life or pro-choice? Like, you know, like they're.
But it's like, all of it starts too with what does your intuition say, right? And so, anyways, my intuition on just about everything is like, yeah, it's complicated.
That's what I said too. Like, my answer is it's complicated.
Yeah, it is. And I'm like, and I'm okay with that. This is where I live, right?
Yeah.
I live in stuff being complicated, and I'm okay with that. And it's so weird to me that people are so polarized about everything. And that's really why I cause trouble on the internet. Because I'm just like,
my problem is I sound like I'm jaded or elitist or something, but like I see like it's the same mistakes on both sides. Like I like hear people yell. I'm like, you're yelling the same thing. You're arguing from a position that is like wrong in the same way. Like you're arguing for the same, like the opposite sides of the same coin almost or something.
It totally is. And what I've been doing is I've been saying like, you've got your fundamentalists and you got your woke fundamentalists. And that's basically what we got going on. Is like there's people that are like, I want to bring America back to what it used to be. Yeah. There's other people that are like, hey, you're using words you shouldn't.
Well, yeah, no, it's like you guys are doing it wrong. You got to do it my way. And it's like, well, how about we just all agree to freedom and allow each other to behave as they wish, you know, like focus on freedoms. And the problem is when you do have like a political system that works by people doing what they want, then it's, I don't want you doing what you want. I want to be doing what I want. And nobody should be telling anybody what the other person should do. You have to figure out how you're going to live, and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to live. And as long as you're not, you know, actually infringing on my rights, my actual freedoms, then do it. That's good.
I still feel like we're talking about children and their imaginary world, you know, because it's just like, no, you can't say that. And it's like, no, he's doing this. He's not allowed to do this. You know, like it's a lot of that. So what I thought was really interesting.
Agriculture, right?
Yeah, back to agriculture. This is fun. So I don't know how he got on the topic of snail mail, but he was saying that like back in the days when we wrote letters, we were a lot more careful with our words. But now that we can put it into print, you don't really think as much before you type like you used to when you had to write with a pen.
Yeah, there's certainly a problem. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, another unintended consequence, right?
So, but one of the things that the agricultural revolution did, right? And you could debate how long it happened. And I could spend a few hours talking about what 12,000 years ago was actually like, because it was a very cataclysmic time. The world kind of was coming out of an ice age at that time too. So there's a lot of other things happening to kind of maybe question the narrative in the book. But one of the things that it did was instead of just hunting animals, we started keeping animals and domesticating animals, and cutting off their tails and putting holes in them and tying them to poles and doing things that a culture with like an animist religion, somebody that, you know, worship the spirit of animals, that no longer worked. So it forced us to change our religion as well, our religious worldview about how we should, you know, exchange or interact with animals. And one of the things in the book that was really kind of mind-blowing to me was the idea that, like, if you're looking at Genesis and you're looking at the earlier books of the Bible, it's like lessons for an agrarian society. It's rules about cattle, what not to eat, what to plant, and all these like different rules about
you have dominion
agrarian society. Yeah, that's what it did. Like the early sort of, I guess, Christian thought, like we had dominion over the animals. There was this separation where and it's because man was made in the image of God, that we were apart and above, and that the universe was created just for our own purpose, our own use. And further, that our life on this planet is so small in relation to everlasting, that what happens here doesn't matter that much. Like what matters more is something above us or outside of this world.
And that is something that I find so whack. That's something, it's funny because there's different streams of evangelicalism. There's different streams of Christianity. And it's interesting, like for me, I'm very drawn to like kind of humanistic thought and, considering this life and how, like if someone's an atheist and a humanist, they're like, this is the one life I have. I'm going to make the most of it by taking care of other people. And I'm like, I don't know, man, that sounds more like Jesus to me than this whole like, life is going to be garbage and then I'm going to die and then I'm going to be in heaven for eternity and everything's going to be better, right? Like I'm like, and so I like to look at different mythologies and draw from them and create something good, right? And I
guess I'm just recently kind of like researching these ideas or looking into these ideas and like how thought, I guess, developed, right? Like you're saying like monks transmit ideas, priests and monks transmit ideas, and it's true. So do philosophers, so do people. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see like thought progressing, and then you have the Enlightenment, and you have the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, the Internet Revolution, they're all just, we're thinking, we're adding on to what we have been thinking. It's all kind of a progression. And it's interesting when you kind of look back and you can kind of see where some of our ideas came from and some of the way that some philosophers were one. These guys became more popular, and the sort of the struggle between ideas throughout history. It's quite, it's interesting. It's educational, I guess,
Well, and what I find too is that we progress as a society in some ways and regress in other ways. Like it's like, well, we're not having as much war anymore, but the way we're treating animals is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, and you know, when we read about like, the lifespan of a chicken is 7 to 12 years, lifespan of a cow is 20 to 25 years, but they're both just like slaughtered at like a few weeks to a few months, because that is, after that, it's like it's just sitting there wasting us money.
Yeah, it's like it's not even a biological machine, and what allows it is, that the belief that we have a soul, basically, that we are,
and they don't.
God, like that thought is responsible for that everything, like all of the evil, basically.
But it makes you wonder, like, which came first, whether the thought that they don't have souls came first, or did it become something convenient, after we realized, we can't be animists.
Well, we had a system of belief. I mean, who knows what people believed in their hearts 12,000 years ago, but
no,
it was generally accepted. Like there was a certain worldview, and we had these views, and then we became agrarian. And I would think that we had gods. We started telling ourselves different stories about how to live, given the sign of the times. Like they adapted it to bring it up to the current day thinking. And religion has always done that. It did it after the Enlightenment. It's doing it every day, right? It did it after Christ. It did it after different other people. So they're constantly going. Like our history is like, we look at religion, we go like, wow, I don't like these parts, or this is wrong. The people in the past read this section wrong. They had this idea wrong. So again, what we're doing is, you have the wrong words, I have the best words, trust what I think, right? Yeah. And so we have this idea that we evolve it. And the fact of that evolution, like the evolution of myth, the fact that these stories have lasted, like, Peterson talking about, like, there is value in that, and it is real that these stories have value, but it just doesn't mean that they're real. You can look back and say, we told ourselves this, and then we changed our minds when this came along, and then we changed our minds when this came along, and then we started, became more global. There was more connectedness, so we changed these rules, like Well, so my conclusion there is that if there is any morality in the Bible, like, we put it there. Like, it's just a mirror. Like, when you read the Bible, what comes out of it is you. Like it's like a mirror, like you're reflecting yourself. You're looking at stories. It's causing you to think, and you're deciding for yourself, like, I like Jesus. I liked how he lived. I like these philosophies. I think that's a model that I should hold myself to. And
I'm actually, next week, I'm talking to a guy who we're going to talk about theology. And his argument is that the Bible is not the final authority, Jesus is. And so basically, you know, where people are like, no, we just get back to the word and we got to find out what the word says about this. He's like, no. The book is not the word. Jesus is the word. Anyways, I read his book. It's going to be kind of an interesting discussion. But, okay. So we thought we were saving time, but we revved life up by 10 times and made our days more anxious and agitated. What I thought was really interesting is like this idea that hunter-gatherers would live in the moment. Like they're like, we need supper for today. Let's go get it.
right.
Whereas farmers had to think months in advance, and it created anxiety. We didn't have anxiety until we started agriculture.
Yeah, that'd be true, I guess. It just completely changed. Like, but I guess I see it as just it's constantly being built on it. Like we went through the agricultural revolution. That's a narrative, right? It's a way of looking back and understanding our past, how we evolved. And like, yeah, at some point we decided that agriculture was a good way to go. Not everybody adopted it at the same time. And then along came, the scientific revolution. We got some better ideas and we improved on those. And we kind of said like, oh, okay, well, capitalism seems to be working. We developed a free market, which is just, it's kind of the same along the same lines of a thought process. Like, let people decide, let things happen. And it's just the agriculture, it's just another step, right, in our evolution. So we can look back at it and go like, why did we do that? How did we do that? And we can see that, that there was a pretty big trade-off. And we can look at the internet revolution, which we're presently going through, and understand that, this is a bit of a Pandora's box. Like we're going into this and we don't know what's going to happen. Like we don't know the result of everybody in the world being able to say whatever they want to everyone, and everybody knowing that opinion and commenting on that opinion. Like it might be a really, really great thing, but we have to, I guess, harness it and try to use it in a way that is going to be beneficial to us.
Well, and I think that's something that's been really interesting with COVID is like how, now it's not just the governments and the scientists telling us how it is. There is grandma on Facebook sharing YouTube videos of the two doctors that disagree with everyone, right? Yeah. And so it's interesting because I'm like, as I'm seeing all this going on, I'm coming back to that whole like, well, their intuition is telling them there's something wrong with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there's no conversation to be had there, really. Like, because there's no rationality. They're going to rationalize from the data that they've seen, right? And I'm just like, I can't wrap my mind around this. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, I'm not even going to start to try to be an epidemiologist. Like, I don't, you know what? Like, I feel like the whole world reacted the same way to the same thing, except for Sweden.
And it is very interesting, the response, just to see like how people kind of came together.
And I'm intrigued to see, like, it looks like
foragers living day to day, agriculture, it's like year to year. And now we're at a point where we're like, okay, man, there's these asteroids flying around and it's going to take us like 20 years to go up. And like, we need to identify these early. Like we're planning like long term. We're planning, maybe we can mine asteroids. Maybe we can terraform Mars. Maybe we can do this. Like, so I guess I would say that that's, we're more moral, right, than foragers or hunter gatherers, because we're looking at things from like a longer perspective, a longer arc of time. And that's kind of like what morality is or is closely follows, because if you're just doing exactly what feels good, like right now in this moment, you're not probably going to be a very good person.
So
Right?
it's kind of like as you
hedonism, and
broaden out into
yeah.
community. And so the more broad you get in your thinking of community, the more moral. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, broad in community, but also in time. Like we're now looking and planning like decades out, hundreds of years out. Like we have this concept, like we can see time very broad. Like we're looking back on them and going like, oh, 12,000 years ago, a few of them decided to sit down, right? Well, they didn't have that perspective, and we now do. So we can make decisions that are like objectively good over a much longer term.
Right, because not only are we thinking broader about the current population of the Earth, we're thinking broader about the future generations.
Yeah, further out than people that had just decided to start agriculture could have possibly planned for. And your next quote, like, so most human cooperation networks have been geared towards oppression and exploitation. And agriculture is one instance where that's very true. Farming is hard. Let's get some slaves to do it. That's kind of been the approach that a lot of societies, I mean, feudalism is where like, there's landowners and then there's the people who work the land, because it's hard to work. It's hard to be a farmer. It's hard to work that land. Yeah. And so you ended up with classes. Like there was like the owner class, and then you had the people that were doing the work.
Right.
Right. So they were like, that was a short-term site. We came along and said, oh, that's not a good way of dealing with it. You have to respect individual rights. And then along came the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, and society became more moral because it respected the freedoms of more people and had a longer, like we planned further ahead. Like,
that's interesting. I've never thought of morality
from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution. Like there's a lot of like development of thought that enabled something like the industrial revolution to occur. It didn't occur without a notion of individual rights or property rights or any things that slowly developed over, since 12,000 years.
That's interesting.
And so the other side of that is like, it was only after we kind of went beyond agricultural that we were able to see that, slavery isn't so good. Feudalism isn't so good. We have to kind of progress past just being agricultural or agrarian, because at that stage in development, you're probably going to use slaves or some type of, indebted servitude.
Well, and I found that really interesting, and I think this probably gets more into the scientific revolution, but how he was talking about slavery wasn't based on racism. Slavery was based on profit. And it was like, I need somebody to go into the swamps and pick whatever it was a cotton. And it's like, these guys are immune to malaria, so we're going to send them in, right? But I mean, those human beings became commodities.
Yeah, and it's not so much, I guess it was about money, but it was the justification for it. And the justification is that they're not individuals, right?
Right.
And so the idea is that when we adopted individualism, the idea that the individual is what's sacred, that's when something like slavery doesn't make any more sense. But if you have a moral guide that, you should sacrifice and whatever's for the common good or whatever is for this, or you don't the lords and the aristocrats, the ruling class actually own the people, and those people just exist as part of a collective. They are just the people that exist, and we can abuse them, and that's it, right? That's how monarchy was. It wasn't very friendly.
Yeah. So I mean, when the U.S. got its independence, they had that whole, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And it's kind of interesting because he plays with that. And he's like, biological humans are not equal. Equality is inextricably linked to creation. Evolution is based on difference, not equality. created equal should actually be evolved differently if we were going to look from an evolutionary point of view. Unalienable rights should be mutable characteristics. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness should be life and pursuit of pleasure. So this is the amended statement. What is the Declaration of Independence, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men evolve differently, and they are born with certain mutable characteristics, and among these are life and the pursuit of pleasure. It's just not quite as sexy, is it?
Yeah, doesn't sound so fancy.
But he was saying it's like imagined order, right? So it's like back to that subjective kind of reality that we're looking at. That's what brings the equality. It's not a scientific principle that we're all equal. I mean, all of us are different. There's not really. And so it's like that imagined order is needed. And I think that's where the myth comes in again, right? Is that we need to have a story that tells us that we're equal for some reason, because then we actually have functional community.
Yeah.
A certain level of equality anyways, because, right, like I think we still have hierarchical structures, and we have certain people within our society that we're like, well, that guy is the president. We got to respect him. And everybody agrees that we got to respect him. No, not really. But
no, the idea it's the idea of it's about freedoms, right? I mean, it's back to the role of government is to allow for freedoms and to restrict liberties only when necessary.
Yeah.
We are like evolution creates we are all different, but we should have equal rights, and you can derive that from objectively observing reality. I mean, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, I acknowledge that you're a person and I'm a person, and we're going to be better off if we just kind of, you know, work together and respect each other. And that's equality. It's like, you know, so it's not imagined. Equality isn't imagined. It is, it can be objectively determined that the best course to do is to have equality. And the problem is, you know, like
it works if you're better for us that way. But I mean, like in the end, like just speaking primarily from an evolutionary point of view, we're not equal.
No.
But basically he argues that Christianity, democracy, and capitalism, what you need to do to get people to follow, you can never admit that order is imagined.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's hard. It's kind of funny that money is like that. If everybody just stopped believing in money, it would just go away. Like gold. I think he talks about gold in that book.
Yes.
Like, what about gold? It makes it even like, you know, when Spanish people came over to the Americas, they were like, oh, that yellow stuff? Yeah, it's not very good. It's kind of soft. It's shiny, but why do you want it so much? Exactly. And gold had become the thing that we killed each other over, and there's no value in it. It's just a metal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I invest on my own, and I don't buy gold because I'm like, what's the value? It doesn't make any sense. Everybody could just tomorrow agree that gold has no value, and it would.
Well, and I mean, and I think it comes down to, and I mean, you can get all spiritual and say everything is temporal, right? It's like we only have so much time on Earth. And so like, I think it like puts things into perspective, because you look at it and you say, okay, I've been really stressed about this thing, but it's like in the like grand scheme of things, and whether you look at it spiritually or just look at it at a physiological level, it's like, how big is the universe? And it's like, how big is this thing that I was stressing about? This one report that I got to get to my boss, you know, how big is that, right? And I think that it's important to put things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so three factors preventing people from seeing order as imagined. First of all, it's embedded in our material world. Our modern houses are organized into rooms. I guess during feudal times, they didn't have rooms.
I guess to this one, it's almost like, to me, it's like you can only understand things like given where you are. Like somebody that lived forever, like that long ago, like who was into feudalism, like, you know, somebody who like in early Christianity, you hadn't read the Bible, you didn't have a personal relationship, you had like, and church and state were one. So you had basically the church telling you exactly what to do. They told you, and part of our history is actually the rejection of this notion of religion that like morality comes from above, right? That you should, it's individual rights, and part of that was like, you know, in the Reformation, in Protestant Reformation, it was a rejection of, you know, the papal authority, saying like there's one person that we all have to get our information from. And there was the idea that the early Christianity, it was like everything that we can know about the world is in this book.
Yeah, exactly.
We do not need any more knowledge. All knowledge is contained within this book. And then the scientific revolution was like, nope. If we look at the world and we make empirical observations, we can know more than what's contained in this book. And that's the scientific revolution. The idea that we can learn about the world by looking at it. Because before the scientific revolution, the church said that that was heresy, to say that there was anything that could be known outside the Bible. Was just, that was heresy. And so part of our evolution of thought is that rejection, right? It's the rejection of that.
Yeah. And I, like, for me, it's like, I've been thinking a lot about cages, and I've mentioned this on the podcast all the time. I've been writing a lot of music about it too. And like this idea of cages, and how it's kind of like, if you get into your church cage, then you can't recognize anything outside of that cage as spiritual. If you get into your ideological cage, you can't recognize anything outside of that ideological cage as a good idea. And I mean, it's the same thing too artistically. It's like, if I get into an artistic cage and I'm like, I am a country musician, therefore there's no other music. It's like, you're missing so much when you get in a cage. And so it's like, to me, it's like either, you know.
Well, I would like that if the cages were like almost like stacked on each other, or had a foundation, because there's like you're in a cage on top of a cage, or in a bigger cage, and like, so you can like, I can see that I'm in this cage, right? I can open the door, I can see out, but I'm in a different cage. Like every time you step out of that cage, you're like, oh, I recognize I was in a cage. I'll step out while you're in a new cage. And you have to like finally get down to like what do you fundamentally believe? Like, why are you believing it? How are you believing it? Who told you to? Those sorts of, and but yeah, that's exactly it. Like, it's the problem of other minds. Everybody I can't understand why you can't see things my way. That's what everybody is constantly yelling, right? Because you know, I see things, I have a perspective, and like you make assumptions that other people don't share, and we can't see, like it would take forever for us to determine, like for me to learn all of your assumptions and for you to learn all of my assumptions, right? But there are some assumptions, and when you get into a disagreement with somebody, it's essentially that you have an assumption that I don't have. Like, you're assuming something about the nature of something. I don't know what it is. You probably don't know what it is either, but it's a deep belief or something that happened really early on, and you just can't see things any other way. I've actually been thinking too about religious people. I've always said, like, you know, that's the problem, because it's such a fundamental disagreement, and not even a disagreement, but a perspective, a way of looking at things. Like, somebody who is deeply religious looks up at the stars like, oh, God is so great, God is so wonderful, this is so beautiful. And another person looks up at the stars and goes, man, the universe is so amazing, like all these stars and the light and the gamma rays, like it's beauty, it's wonder, it's awe. You're looking at the exact same thing. You're both smart, you're both, you know, agree on, you've spent time thinking about things, but you just fundamentally see it in completely different ways.
See, and I just want to see everything in every way.
Well, that's what I think too. Like, one of my favorite philosophers is John Stuart Mill. And he says, like, if all mankind but one were of one opinion, all of mankind would be no more justified in silencing the opinion of that one person than he would have in silencing the opinion of everyone else. Right? So never silence an opinion. If everybody you know thinks the same as you, you have to go out and find somebody to battle you.
Yeah.
Untested opinions aren't opinions. So if you have a disagreement with somebody and you exchange ideas and it's sincere, there's like, you're going to be better off no matter what. Either you're going to agree with them and they have some version of the truth that you want to incorporate into your own version of truth. And so you improve, you get closer to your own version of a truth, or you reject their opinion and you gain more confidence and like you're more steadfast in your belief because it's stood up against somebody else's opinion. So if you have a good opinion, one that you hold dear, it's because you've tested it against all these other opinions. And I still hold on to this belief. So holding on to a belief that you've never had anybody challenge is, you wouldn't hold on to it because it's not tested. It's not important to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is. It totally is. And I mean, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. I was like, I'm going to get some different perspective on this, right? And man, we could go on about this book forever.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting late.
Is it? Yeah.
But I think what was really interesting about this is to see how, you know, the agricultural revolution had unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And as a result, we had to set up rules so that we weren't abusing people in this. We haven't figured out how to set up rules to not abuse animals because that's kind of a necessity for this system, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we still have the belief, like, I mean, religion and Christianity, like we still have the belief that God is, like, man is made in the image of God. And so we still think that, you know, we are really separate from nature and separate from animals. Until we somehow reconcile that, like, I'm not saying like that's the reason that animal abuse occurs, but there is some kind of disconnect where like it's like we are animals, we are the world, like we can't do things to the world and not have it come back on us. And I think a lot of the problem too is I've heard this argument that the problem is where if you look at if you believe in heaven and hell and that you believe in eternal life and that this life on earth is just so meaningless, that why would you be a conservationist or environmentalist? Why would you worry about like the progress of humanity if just live a good life and get eternal life? But
well, that is a nuts thing though, like, because this whole concept, and I love this about Richard Rohr, I think it was Richard Rohr, who said, like, if you read the Apostles' Creed, it's like, we believe, Jesus was born of a virgin, he suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, rose again, and all that, right? But he's like, what's missing is between when he was born and when he suffered under Pontius Pilate. And that is the section that it's like, that's in the Bible, guys. Like the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like there's all this stuff here. And there are groups of people that are awakening to that. And that's exciting to me because I'm like, if there's any value that Christianity is going to have to this world, it's going to be to actually look at the Sermon on the Mount and acting out on that.
I think there's value in all of that. There's value in looking at Plato. There's value in looking at Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius and Jesus Christ and Goethe and Hegel and Marx. Like you have to the idea is the more thoughts, the better. Like if that's the history of the book too. Like I think it's like, what can it tell us about who we are now by looking back, and how can we try to learn, and like what kind of perspectives can we bring into what we're doing now when we look back and say like, oh yeah, these guys were doing this and then they did this and that wasn't so good, and then they did this and now it's not so good. Like we can look at ourselves right now and be like, what are we doing that's not so good? What are we doing that might be like what they were doing, there where
and that's
moral, we condemn them morally now, but what is it that they were doing that was wrong? Why was it that they were wrong in the time?
Exactly. And I mean, that's the way I see what sin is, right? Sin is, what am I doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? How are we hurting people? How are we hurting animals? How are we hurting the earth, right? And I'm like, and that's why it's still core to me, is I'm like, no. I've screwed up. I need to ask for forgiveness. But not only do I just ask for forgiveness, but I need to actually change my ways. And it's like, if I'm not doing that, all of this Christianity stuff is garbage, because it's like, what? So you mean I could just do whatever I want? I say my prayer before I die, and I just made the world a terrible place, and I get paradise, and other people that tried to live better don't get it. And I understand that is like the worst thing.
The problem is that, like, logically, okay, well, the best and quickest way is a suicide bomber. That becomes like the rational decision. That's the quickest and easiest way to get into heaven. And if somebody's going to tell somebody that this life is nothing compared to the eternal life, and I think that you should kill yourself to get there.
Yeah.
So believing that, I guess I'm saying that religious thought is very dangerous.
Yeah, it can be.
People like, and the problem with saying like, okay, well, their religion, like, then it just gets into, it's like, well, you have the wrong words, I have the right words, listen to my words.
I know, and that's my thing, is like, I don't think the right words are everything, and it's like, and I don't know if I have all the right words.
Well, you don't. You don't.
And no, I don't. I definitely don't.
The idea is that nobody does, so don't accept any authority. Like if you let somebody else say what is good and what is wrong and how you should live, it's corrupt. Like, it's gonna get abused. There's gonna lead. It's unintended consequences again, right? It sounds good. Like, just tell people how to live and tell them that there's this reward, but then it glitches to suicide bombers. Because somebody goes like, oh, well, for me, if you make me accept that life is short, it's meaningless, it's all about eternal life, I should sacrifice myself for others. If you give me all of those beliefs and then tell me that the quickest way to achieve them is to blow myself up, ta-da, right? So how do you control that? How do you keep that?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the extreme end of things, but I know that like within different religions, it's happened. And, where people are killing other people, it's insane. And
so why is it happening? And I think this book, like, if you look back, it's like, the answer is because we're still believing what the people who did all these things believed. We just changed the words. But we still have the same beliefs. Like, the Enlightenment is just kind of, it's still ongoing. That's kind of how I say it. Like, it's really, that's the problem. It sounds good, but it's one of those like unintended consequences.
But I still see, it's kind of interesting, because it's like we still have this like kind of subjective reality we all have to buy into. Yeah. And it's like we have to see, we cannot acknowledge that this order is imagined or everything falls apart.
Yeah, we can't see that we're in it. We just trust that when we hit the power button, power comes on. We hit the light switch, light comes on. Money works. I trust that when I go to the store, I can give them a credit card. I trust that Visa will communicate to TD and all these different people will totally, I trust that happens. And the person giving me the goods trusts that somebody else is going to give them the money that I agreed to give. Like, it's, yeah. And the more interconnected we are, there's a dependency. And if you just all of a sudden one thing stops happening, like trade stops, like, that's probably shut down the borders. Like, we can't. We will die if we actually did that.
Yeah.
Like, we're too interconnected. Globalism is the next revolution, I guess, if you want to.
Oh my gosh.
Add to the types of revolutions that we go through, because that's one of the things that we started it. It has a lot of benefits. It's raised millions and millions of people up out of poverty. but there are some unintended consequences, and it's another Pandora's box or a gate that you just can't, we can't control anymore, and we can't go back.
Yeah, I'm curious as to see how things will change when the lockdown is done.
We need to make all our own masks, and we need to make all our own medical equipment now, because we need to protect our country. And it's like, that's not going to work. We've gone too far, you know?
Yeah. So you think we're going to come out of this all right?
Yeah, I think there'll be a new normal, but I really do think that it'll probably be less different than people think, either good or bad. I mean, I kind of look back at the SARS, like 2003, the SARS outbreak, and then people were all gung-ho and working for a vaccine and all this, but it stopped being a problem, and we stopped looking into a vaccine. Like, we're kind of like, oh, well, that problem went away. And so I guess it's pessimistic to view, but I kind of think that we're going to just, in a couple of years, it'll be like, oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, that was weird. Nothing changed.
Like the new Y2K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a little bit different.
Little bit of a bigger deal.
But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Brad. And we will do the scientific revolution eventually.
Sure.
I'll have to get back to you on scheduling that. If you want to get a hold of Brad, I will put in the show notes a link to his Facebook page.
Yeah.
He's not selling anything.
Nope. Just free exchange of ideas.
Yes. I love free exchange of ideas. There's always tons of them. I can talk about ideas forever. So, yeah. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Air Smudge.